Happy Halloween and welcome back to October Scaries. We are going to talk about Barbarian. Barbarian is a horror thriller that came out in 2022. It's about a woman named Tess. Tess has a job interview, and so she has rented an Airbnb. She arrives at night, it is raining, tries to get in the house but can't because the key is missing. Come to find out, the Airbnb is already occupied by a man named Keith. And so they're looking at each other like who's faking here? Like who's telling the truth? Who's lying? Is Keith squatting? They check the dates. They both have the same dates. Keith just happened to get there first. So Tess is like, ugh, let me just figure this out tomorrow. I'm gonna find myself somewhere else to sleep tonight, but oops, there's a convention in town, so all the hotels are booked. And Keith is like, you know what? Why don't we figure this out the next day? You can sleep here. Like, you're free to stay. Like, it's raining. You can't sleep in your car. Just sleep here. I'll give you the bedroom, I'll take the couch. And Tess is like, but she agrees. And that's her bad, because it's about to go down. I love this movie. I love Barbarian. It is so beautifully subversive. The story is great. It's a roller coaster. It had my attention from beginning to end. The tension is great. Like, literally from the beginning of the first scene, there's like some creepy sound happening on the soundtrack. It just sets it up. Like, my stomach was in knots before anything even happened. The camera angles add to the like disorientation and like suspicion that I felt watching the movie. It's perfection. It's written and directed by Zach Krieger, I think is how you say that. He ate and left no crumbs. Dishes clean. Let's talk about it. So let's talk about Tess, our heroine, our main character. Tess is a hero, right? So as the hero of the story, she doesn't know when to quit. She can do this all day. But also, because this is a horror movie, she's a heroic idiot, right? Like, times when she should have called the police, times when she should have walked away, she didn't. Now, I recognize that, like, this is, like, you know, the case for, like, every horror main character. The signals, the red flags are right there, and she still stays. But come to find out, after, like, I wrote my notes and stuff like that, and I looked more into the movie, that's exactly what Zach Krieger was going for. He was inspired by a book he read called The Gift of Fear: Survival Signals That Protect Us from Violence, and he was specifically inspired by a section of the book where the author is encouraging women to trust their intuitions when interacting with men. The author encourages them to take the red flags seriously. And I'm like, okay, because that's what I saw. Because Tess, you see, she has the right instincts from the very beginning. From her initial interactions with Keith, right? He offers to make her tea, she doesn't drink it. And so she has the instincts, but she ignores them. Never mind what Keith turned out to be. She ignores her instincts in this for the sake of like being nice, for the sake of like not judging too much, for the sake of being fair. I love that in the first few scenes, the movie is creepy just based on Keith being a man. That is enough. It's like, are you awkward or are you a killer? Are you awkward or are you a kidnapper? There's a specific scene, and also like Keith says like some of the right things, right? Because he's like, oh, I noticed you didn't drink the tea. Again, Keith very much behaves like a man, and they actually have a conversation about that in the movie. But like when he offers to make her tea, like he's not thinking about the fact that like you are suspicious, Keith, because you're a man, not just because you're a stranger, but because you're a man and she's a woman. And so then he acknowledges that with the wine, where he's like, you know, I noticed you didn't drink the tea, so I waited for you so I could open this in front of you so you can see. But me, like, I'm still looking like, okay, but like, do you get it, or are you getting it because you're still setting her up? And you know, they have the conversation where Tess is like, you know, if I was a man. They have a conversation about the gender dynamic, and she explains her fear and stuff like that. And Keith understands. But there's this scene where they're like folding bedding, and I think he's teaching her how he goes about putting a duvet through something, bedding, complicated folding, right? And I'm sitting there tense because I'm like, I just know he's about to like, wah, like throw the covers over her And like, that's gonna be it for her. I was suspicious of Keith right up until Keith got. Because when they were in the basement, when Keith popped out, because first of all, it's like, where did you go? Right? We saw what room she was in. Like, where did you go? How did you know? All three of us were side-eyeing. And so when he pops out of the darkness and is like on his hands and knees, I swear he's faking. He's about to pull her. Listen, Keith died under suspicion. Okay, because it's not until that thing came out. Let me not dehumanize. It's not until the creature came out and like bashed his head in that I was like, oh shit. Keith was innocent. Rest in peace, Keith. You were a real one. But again, you see Tess like navigating being a woman, like existing as a woman, because after she gets creeped out in the basement, she sees the bed, she sees the cages. She's ready to go, she's ready to dip, but Keith is like, wait, let me check it out. And she's like, okay. I'm like, no, like, goodbye. And then like she props the door open because she just has to go find out what the hell. Okay. And then when AJ gets kidnapped, she is trying to help him. She goes back for him because her experience of AJ is that he's a victim just like her. He has been kidnapped just like her, so she can't simply like turn her back on him. She wants to help him get out too. So Tess is a good character. She's also like a cautionary tale at the same time. She does some stupid stuff necessarily because she is a main character in a horror movie. The other thing this movie does very, very well, it's like the meat and potatoes of this movie for me, where this movie snaps, it's on the subject of monstrosity. What is a monster? What does a monster look like? What does a monster do? What is horror? Like, what is scary? What does scary look like? It plays around with that very, very beautifully and very, very effectively. So our monsters, 3 monsters. We've got we've got the creature, right? The obvious monster. We've got AJ Gilbride. We've got Frank. Let me talk about AJ versus Frank. Like, the creature is like, don't judge a book by its cover, kind of, because you should judge a book by its cover sometimes, especially when it looks like that. But it's so interesting that AJ calls Frank, like, I think he calls him a piece of shit. Like, he is horrified by Frank's actions. And it is so fascinating because to AJ, that's what a monster is in human form. It's Frank, not him. I truly believe that AJ does not see what the problem is with what he did to his co-star, right? Like he said to his friend, like, I'm just a very persuasive guy. If something was wrong with if she had a problem, if she really didn't want to be with him, she wouldn't have said yes. But because she eventually said yes, that leaves him off the hook. She's a lying bitch, like he did not rape her. He is a monster. He is her monster. He is a monster in society. But it is so much easier. He doesn't see a mirror, even slightly, in Frank. Frank's monstrosity is overtly horrifying. Frank's victims are screaming. There might be blood as well on those tapes based on the state of that room that Tess saw. And bro, like, the reveal that room wasn't like, Keith's lair. The cages weren't Keith's lair. And it wasn't even something the monster, like, after the reveal of the monster, I was like, I still didn't understand, like, what was the monster doing? But, like, the reveal that, like, it is a human, a man. He's the owner of that room. He's the owner of those cages. Those cages were to keep his victims. Anyways, but yes, Frank's victims scream. They are in pain, visually, like you can see. And so, like, to AJ, that's what a monster is. Not him. Not what he did. Like, that's an issue. Keeping tapes and stuff like that. And it's just so good and just so interesting and fascinating that, like, there are levels. And there are levels, basically. Not even in AJ's mind, because AJ doesn't see himself as a monster. So as the movie goes on, Tess goes back for AJ. I don't blame AJ for shooting her because he didn't know. Again, just like with the descent, why are you running up on people in the darkness when you know danger is afoot? I don't blame him for shooting her. However, once she was injured, I was waiting for him to leave her because he's a piece of shit. But he doesn't leave her. Oh, he does something so much worse. Especially like once like the creature was like, survived and was after them. And they were running up the water tower. I'm like, oh, he gonna leave her ass. And AJ has that moment of self-reflection where he's like, am I a bad person or a good person who sometimes does bad things? And what spurred the reflection was, the fact that he shot somebody. I don't know if he was also thinking about the accusation against him, but anyways, when he threw that girl off the water tower, I was like, ow! Shocking, but also like, oh, this is gonna be one of those movies where the main character doesn't survive. And then the creature jumps at, well, I think first the creature kills AJ and then jumps out after her. Now, when the creature kills AJ, that's when we turned. We're like, yes, like all of a sudden we were cheering for her. And you realize that like she really does, like, that's her baby. Like she really, like, the creature is the third most human person in this movie. It's Tess, Keith, and the creature. She will kill the baby if the baby doesn't behave, but like she just wants to take care of something. And like the fact that she has a nurturing side considering what she's been through, because let us take a moment to think about the fact that the creature is lactating. The creature is lactating. What does that mean? Class, what does it mean that she's producing milk? The homeless man in this movie at one point tells Tess that, I think tells Tess and AJ that the creature is not even the worst thing in the house. I'm thinking, oh, there must be like another monster. If there must be like a family of monsters. There is another monster. It's Frank. Because when she like backed away from the door, it's like, what's in there? Frank. Frank is still alive. And it's like the fact that she was afraid of him, because the homeless man told us like it's incest and stuff. Incest, like he would kidnap these women, keep them, impregnate them, sleep with the offspring. He must have gotten rid of the boys, deleted the boys, any boy children that were born. But like that's what he was doing, and I imagine that like he kept going until he could not anymore, until his body gave out on him. That must be why the creature is afraid of him. I think he was essaying her. I think he likely was impregnating her. I think it's very possible, very likely, that she probably either can't carry children to term, or maybe she was having stillbirths because her body is so like her insides are in shambles, because she is a product of generations of incest, like consistently. But yeah, that's why she's lactating, is because that, plus it's very possible that like because again of the deformity, maybe she's perpetually lactating just because like her body is not functioning like a normal human body. Anyways, like it's fascinating that she's so strong physically, but mentally Frank has her mind. Like he got her. She's a victim. She is the biggest victim in this movie. Which brings us to the question of, what does scary look like, right? Is it the economically anorexic rigor mortis neighborhood? Well, yes. But it's also white suburbia with the manicured lawns and the fresh paint, right? There's also, I think, something, it's Frank who's like very nicely dressed and owns a home. I think there's also something in that scene where Frank goes to buy baby stuff, where the woman rushes to help him because all he says is that his wife is pregnant. And so there's like this assumed, like, I don't think it's just like customer service. I think there is something there about the eagerness to help a man, not just a man, but a man who's about to become a father, because the conditioning is that, like, you know, he's doing his best and that he doesn't know. And so, like, so presumed innocence, presumed, what do they call it? Incompetence. And so she rushes to help. Meanwhile, the man is picking up, yes, he's about to have a baby. Yes. His victim is about to have a baby. The movie is perfect. There is no bad in this movie. I think it's the best movie I watched on this list, and I give it a 5 out of 5.